All right, we're going to do a quick review on decimal operations and rounding. So this is 2-2 and 2-3 in our book. So let's start out with adding and subtracting decimals. The only thing you have to remember is lining up the decimals. I'm sure you remember this from the past, but make sure they're lined up. So in our addition example here on the left, we're going to have to add a 0 to the 13.2 so that they both have 2 places, to the hundredths, after the decimal. And then you just add up. So 7 plus 0 is 7, 5 plus 2 is 7, 4 plus 3 is 7, and 1. And you bring your decimal straight down, so it's 17.77. Same thing for subtraction. So we have 24 minus 3.0987. I'm going to add a point and 4 zeros to the 24 so that they have the same number of zeros. Okay? And then I'm just going to do my subtraction. I'm going to have to borrow all the way over here. This would all be 9s. And the last one would be a 10. And then I'm going to subtract. So I get 3, 1, 0, 9. Again, the decimal comes straight down, 0, 2. So the main thing for adding and subtracting, line up those decimals. If you don't line them up, you're not going to get the right answer. All right, next, multiplication. This time you don't have to line up the decimals. You can line them up. You won't get the wrong answer. You're just going to make more work for yourself. So you might as well not line them up. So for now, I'm going to ignore the decimals and just do my normal multiplication. So 1 times 2, 2 times 3, times 6, times 5 times 2 plus 1. All right, extra place. Times 1 is pretty easy. Just go straight across. And then times 0, I'm not even going to bother. So go ahead and add it up. I get 2, 7, 5, 7, 6. All right, so this is where I have to worry about my decimal. I'm going to go back and look at the problem and see that there were 3 decimal places in this number, 2 in this one, so altogether 5 decimal places. So that means I need to go over 5 places to place my decimal. So 0.67572 is my answer. All right, and finally dividing decimals. So if I have 67.2 divided by 0.32, the main thing is the first number, the dividend, goes inside the house. So the 67.2 is inside the house. And the 0.32 is outside the house. Now the one that matters whether it's a decimal or not is the divisor, the one outside the house. So this 0.32, I want to move the decimal until it's no longer a decimal anymore. Okay, so that means 2 times over. I have to do the same thing to the dividend. So I move it 2 times over. And in this case, there's no number here, so I'm going to add a 0. And bring that decimal straight up out of the house onto the roof. Okay, so again, this is the number that can't be a decimal. So you move it over and you match it on the dividend on the inside of the house. Then it's just normal long division. So I can go in 2 times, 64, I get 3, bring down my 2. Goes in 1 time to 32, 0, bring down my 0. 32 goes into 0 0 times, and I'm done. So the answer to this would be 210. All right, so that's reviewing the 4 different operations with decimals. Now let's review rounding really quickly. So this is something that shouldn't be that difficult, but some people have a good amount of problems with it. So let's go over it pretty thoroughly. So we have a number here, 3,172.1583. So I'm going to start with my thousands, hundreds, tens, etc. rounding to those. So starting with thousands. So the thousands place is right here, the 3. And if I'm going to round to that thousands place, what I'm worried about is what is the number before it. The number before it's a 1. So that means that's not going to affect it at all. And I'm going to round it down to 3,000. Okay? Since I'm rounding to the thousands is the only one that should have a number in it. And everything after that should be zeros. Now hundreds. So this time I'm worried about the hundreds place, where the 1 is. So I'm going to look at the number before it, a 7. This time that 7 is going to bump me up 1/100. So I still keep the 3. And now it's going to be 3,200. Again, the hundreds place is the last number I have. Everything after that is zeros. All right. Now I'm going to round to the nearest tens. So I'm looking at my 7. And you look back at the 2, which is not going to affect anything. So I still have 3, 1, 7, and then 0. The tens place is the last place to have a number, and after that, zeros. All right, now I get into where I'm going to have to be looking at the decimals. Let's fix this, 3,000. All right, so rounding to the nearest ones place. So I'm looking at my ones place. That means I need to look at the decimal point after it. 0.1 is not going to change anything. So if I was rounding it to the nearest whole, the nearest one, right? Ones is another word for nearest whole. Then it's just going to be 3,172. Nothing's changing because that 0.1 is not going to make it go up one. All right, then I get into my decimal rounding. So I'm going to look at my tenths place. So my tenths is a 1, but I look before and there's a 5. So that 5 is going to bump it up 1. So I'm going to have 3172.2. Now I could add these zeros like I did up with the thousands, hundreds, tens, but I don't need them. They're useless, so I might as well not add them. I'm just going to go ahead and cut off everything else after that tenths place. Same for hundredths. So when I'm doing my hundredths now, so my hundredths is right here. Hold on. Okay. And so I'm going to look at the number before it, the 8. Again, it's going to bump it up 1. So I'm going to have 3172.16 now. So I stop at that hundreds place. Don't go any further. Don't need to add the zeros. You know all the other numbers are staying the same. The only number that could possibly change is the place we're talking about. In this case, my hundreds changed to a 6. The case before it, the tenths, my tenths place changed to a 2. I don't keep that 2 when I'm talking about hundreds now. That was just for my tenths place. Okay? And the very last two thousandths, so if I was going to round to the nearest thousandths, here's my thousandths. I'm going to look back at the 3. The 3 is not doing a whole lot, so I'm just going to keep the whole number and just drop the 3 off. So 3172 point, forgot what my number was, 158. Just drop off that 3 because it's not going to move it up or down. For 10 thousandths, my number only goes to 10 thousandths. After this is all a bunch of zeros. They don't write them because they're useless. So if I'm rounding to the nearest 10,000th, well, I'm not rounding at all really. I'm just keeping that exact same number. So I'm keeping my 3,172.1583. And that's rounding. Okay? So the other time you see rounding a lot, you guys see this all the time. If I were giving you back a grade, and let's say you got a grade of 17 out of, we'll say 23. You all punch into your calculator. So you do 17 divided by 23 in your calculator, and you get 0.739130435 in your calculator, okay? And we always say the only numbers that matter are these two because that's your percentage. But you always have to look at that number right after it because if that is 5 or higher, which in this case it is, instead of having a 73%, you actually have a 74%. You can round it up to the nearest whole percent. Remember, percents are moving over twice. So our nearest whole percent is 74, which take every point you can get, right? 74 better than a 73. So that's one example of where you see rounding a good bit. Another place you might see rounding is in money. If you do a problem and you get the answer is 5.7523 and you're talking about money, you would round to the nearest hundredths place. Money goes to 2 decimal places. So in this case, it would be $5.75. Okay? You won't keep the 2, 3. You don't have parts of pennies. So when you're rounding with money, always go to the hundredths place. Even if that means adding on numbers. If I got 4.8 as an answer and it's supposed to be money, I'm not going to leave it as $4.8. That's $4.80. I'm going to add that 0 because I should go to the hundredths place for money. All right, that's it.